Ready? Great.
Here we go.
Well, bouncing back is something I would love to start with. Could you tell me about your relationship with failure?
Yeah, and it's evolved over time. I had such a great fear of failure, and I believe that what we most fear will definitely manifest itself. And so growing up, I grew up really poor, and I wanted to be rich. I literally focused on, I always say, if you pay attention, plus give it your intention, the coincidences in your life will happen. And that's truly the story of my life about being rich. And I think my why, which I believe everyone already knows their why, is to help someone or something. Mine was to help my mom. I wanted to buy a house and a car for my mom. I was super happy growing up, 6 kids, no money, poor as all dirt, but super happy. And the only time I wasn't happy is I'd catch my mom crying because financial stresses were getting to her. And it would break my heart because she worked so hard and super mom, right? And had super siblings. And then I worked really hard myself and ended up, making it. I went through a transition of wanting to be a professional football player, a doctor, a lawyer. My mom raised us with the concept of doctor, lawyer, or failure, that the fetus wasn't fully developed till after graduate school, that literally we were driven by Jewish guilt and waking up at 5 a.m. But I literally worked so hard in 9 months out of law school. Instead of being a real lawyer, although I had to take the bar to appease my mom, I got involved in the internet, and I made my first $1 million, bought my mom a house and a car, which solidified this fact that money could buy happiness and that money was that missing component. But you talk about bouncing back. I was totally afraid of being poor again. My biggest fear was my dad had gone bankrupt and bounced back, and he had never supported us. And, I didn't know any better growing up, but I literally had a great fear. I would rather have died than lost my money. And sure enough, I worked even harder and smarter and longer and went to the Silicon Valley and exponentially grew my wealth and working in the wireless proxy server space and raising millions of dollars on Sand Hill Road to finally becoming the CEO of the first smartphone, the first Windows CE device called the PC phone, making multi-millions of dollars in my early 30s. Once again, reinforcing that money buys happiness.
Yeah.
Now the fear was even greater. I remember building a huge home in San Diego, my dream home. I'm married to my dream girl, and I built this home. I have my 3rd daughter on the way, and I'm thinking to myself, I can buy whatever I want, literally whatever I want, and I was terrified and unhappy for the first time in my life because there was so much to lose. Yeah. And money meant everything because money was attached to my happiness. It had bought my happiness. It bought other people happiness, and I was completely lost. And so, as the universe likes to do, it manifested your greatest fears to teach you the lessons that there's nothing to fear. That trust and faith, the aggregate of what we think, say, do, and believe, and even the unconscious competencies of, your personality traits, characteristics, obsessions, and addictions, all can be aligned in trust in the universe. And so I lost over $100 million. The thing about my bounce back was different. And I really want to point this out. 2 years before I lost everything, I consider that my bounce back. And
2 years before?
Before, yeah. And I know people may not believe it or may not see it, but I had 3 different things that occurred in my life that I believe caused me to bounce back before I lost everything. And I was more prepared to face that great fear of not only saying I was bankrupt, but telling my mom that I was bankrupt and that I had lost her house because I forgot to put it in her own name. I kept it in my own name. And the fear was great. But the 3 things that occurred was, number 1, I told you about my father, who was a deadbeat dad, who I hated because he was just like me. When I was 10 years old, he was my hero, and he forgot my birthday. And he ruined our relationship because not that he forgot the birthday, but when I called him, instead of telling me the truth, he told me he didn't believe in birthdays and he wasn't going to celebrate my birthday ever again. So when I was 30 years old, he gave me a jacket for my 30th birthday, the first gift I'd received in 20 years. I'd gone through a reconciliation with him. I learned to understand him, pray for his happiness, but I still wasn't healed myself. I was lost in the money-driven world. So I called my dad, and when he sent me the jacket to thank him, I was in tears. And when I opened the jacket, it fit me perfectly, which was even more surprising that he had gone through the troublesome time to ask my wife for my exact size. You know, I'm not the most average looking human being, and it was custom made to fit me. And unfortunately, when I opened it up, all the lining was torn out. There was no pockets inside, and I got extremely mad. And I called my dad. I'm like, "What are you trying to punish me more?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I can't wear this jacket." He said, "It's not for wearing." I said, "What's it for?" He said, "It's to hang in your closet and remind you of me every day." I was like, "What, that you're an asshole? Remind you every day? What?" He's all, "Well, to remind you you're just like me." I'm like, "I'm nothing like you. I support my family." I went through the whole diatribe of how I thought I was different than him. I'm, not an overseller, back-end seller, a liar, a manipulator. I'm an honest person. I worked hard. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm a successful man in the community. I'm a philanthropist. I'm listing off everything. And he said, "No." He said, "You're just like me." He said, "You want to be the richest man in the cemetery." And he said, "I'm giving you that jacket as a gift to remind you you can't take anything with you." And so, at the time I wasn't ready to hear that seed though, right? I hung up the phone aggravated going, he doesn't know me. I'm nothing like him, right? The next lesson before my bounce back was my best friend in the 4th grade was this guy named Robbie Blake. And Robbie Blake was just a really good friend. In fact, in the 6th grade, Robbie Blake asked this girl that I loved to go steady for me. Right, he was much more courage, had much more courage than me, and so he asked this girl, "Hey, will you go steady with Dave Meltzer? He likes you." And she said, "No, tell him to ask me himself." And then he embarrassed me because he yelled it in front of all my friends, like, "Dude, she said no." Well, it ended up I threw an egg at that girl and rocks at her and called her ugly and asked why her hair was so funny, and that was the girl that I ended up marrying. That girl who hated me and was afraid of me. So Robbie had a significant role throughout my entire life, and at that time in my life, he wasn't hanging out with me anymore. And so I took him golfing, and I wanted to talk to him, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, how come we don't hang out? You're my best friend." He said, "Because I don't like who you hang out with." I said, "Yeah, but I'm not doing what those guys are doing. I'm not like those guys. They're just fun, and they have a lot of money, and they can travel with me, and they can do things." And he looked at me right in the eye, still breaks my heart, and said, "Look, you can lie to me, don't lie to yourself." That one really, really hurt. And then 2 weeks later, I came home from lying to my wife. I was partying with a guy named Little John from the Grammy Awards, and I'd lied to her about so many different things. And I came home, and I was intoxicated and probably a few other things, and she told me straight out she wasn't happy and that I better take stock in who I was or what I wanted to become because she was going to leave me. So I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, I was really pissed. I was in blame, shame, and justification. I couldn't believe she could disrespect me in that way. We had a huge home, a Ferrari, a Porsche, a motorhome, a boat, every single thing you want to purchase, and 3 beautiful daughters together. And I was like thinking in my mind, who's the best divorce lawyer I could find to leave her? And I was so aggravated. And then there's where I think the bounce back happened. As I lied in bed, and I started before, all that madness and frustration and anger. And all of a sudden, humility came over me, and there was just this thought: what if, what if my dad is right? What if my best friend is right? What if my wife was right? Like, what if? Before I go and attack everybody, what if they're right? And what I found out was they were, as I lied there in bed, and then depression set upon me. I started literally thinking about, like, holy shit, like I have screwed up my life. And it wasn't about the money because I had plenty at that time, right? I had hit bottom. And then I remember, just out of the universe always gives you what you need, Rocky came on, which was one of my favorite movies, the original Rocky. And I was watching Sylvester Stallone or Rocky just get beat and pummeled, knocked down. And if you watch it, you'll see he looks up every time. He's knocked down, his face is on the ground, and then he looks up, and then he gets up. Yeah. And something came over me. I said, man, if I could just look up, I can get up, right? And I started outlining. I got out of bed, started outlining what made me me. Because I was Midas, man. There's, all these things, but what made me me that were the good values, right? Yeah. Not this manipulative, overselling, back-end selling, lying person, right? That lived in blame, shame, and justification, but the accountable, gracious, forgiving, inspired poor kid that played college football when people said they couldn't, made millions of dollars when everyone said I couldn't. Yeah. What made that, right? Yeah. So that's what I stuck by, and I outlined that. And the scariest part for my wife wasn't my bounce back. The scariest part was when we had lost over $100 million, lost everything, and I had more confidence and happiness than ever. What scared her was, how could I be in such a wonderful place when I had screwed economically so much up? Like, how was I going to bounce back economically?
Right.
That was never a fear of mine. Right, I've manifested money my entire life. I have an unconscious competency. I have an intellect in a way about productivity, and accessibility, and value that I don't think many people on earth have. And I made 9 months out of law school with $100,000 law loans, no real skills or knowledge other than school, no experience and no relationship capital. Why or how would I not make money again? Right? The confidence was overwhelming, especially because I'd shifted the paradigm of value and I was living my life for 2 years of service. Even though I was losing everything, I was fixing things. I was taking accountability for them. In fact, the reason I could have fought the bankruptcy, I just took accountability for it, right? I took the lessons and I forgave myself. I took the lessons and I was gracious and completely forgiving and grateful for everything I had, and it wasn't money. I was even more grateful for the lesson that I don't need money. That everything was now literally going to come through me. I came up with the personal values, experiential values that I wanted. My giving values was going to be about the legacy that I had, my name, and my receiving values were what I could give. What does that mean? My understanding of receiving was no longer about not having enough or just having just enough. I was going to live my receiving values of living in a world of more than enough, where everything comes through me with appreciation, gratitude, adding value to give to others, so that my receiving values actually became my giving values. That the more that I could receive, the more I could give. And that included love, forgiveness, gratitude. The more that I had, the more I was going to give. And so I got very clear on my values, and then utilized that unconscious competency of productivity and accessibility, of understanding how to monetize in the currency of this universe, which is money. It's an object of energy that you put into the flow. And the other currency of the universe, which is faith, the aggregate of what I think, say, do, and believe, and the unconscious competencies of my personality traits, characteristics, obsessions, and addictions. And when I aggregated all of those, faith and money, my life took off. And so for the last 11 years, I've been able to not only rebuild what I had built, but build far beyond the economic side, but into a philanthropy, humanitarian, motivational, inspirational, from being an author, a speaker, TV producer, podcast, whatever they call those people. And most importantly, a family person. I redistributed my values to, number one, my own personal health. It comes first. Because 2.5 years ago, I reached the pinnacle. I had reached the area of my life where I never thought I would be, where I could do whatever I wanted again, but it was all about everyone else. And so I asked my wife, who saved my life, I said, hey, what can I do for you? You tell me, we can do whatever we want. You want me to quit working? You want me to buy you something? Like, what do you want me to do for you? And all she said was, take care of yourself.
Wow.
And I said, what? She goes, yeah, because if you take care of yourself, I know you'll take care of everyone else. So at that time, family was first for me, then my work, then my health. And if you put your family and your work before your health, you'll never worry about your health, because you'll always want to do the other two.
Right.
So I started putting 2.5 years ago my health first, and completely formed myself, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, meditating and eating right and exercising every day and stretching and all the things that make me feel better.
Yeah. And what we're getting at here is that you have this amazing attitude of generosity and looking out. And one thing that's a tool that you use in being that way is the 100-20 rule. A lot of people have heard of the 80-20 rule, but what's the 100-20 rule, and how do you use that?
Yeah, it's something I practice. I wake up every morning and dream that my room is full of $100 bills. And I want to carry the energy that I'm giving you $100 and asking for 20 back. It takes radical humility to ask for the 20 back. It doesn't take radical humility to give the 100 away. But I want to know, not just consciously, but subconsciously and unconsciously, energetically, I want to know and carry with me and practice the frequency of giving more value than I receive, creating a void and allowing the universe to fill that void unconditionally, without judgments or conditions. I want to know the frequency, so that not only can I do that when I meet people energetically, but just pragmatically quantitative value of every deal that I have so that I can guarantee that I'll be a profit center. That my goal and challenge to myself as a capitalist is that every business situation I have, I'm not going to do it until I can figure out how can I give that person $100 of quantifiable value, ask for $20 for that value, and guarantee it. And if you do that, nobody can see any reason why they wouldn't want to move forward.
Absolutely. David, before I ask my last question, where should people look for you online?
Just remember my name, David Meltzer, D-A-V-I-D, Meltzer, at David Meltzer, mostly Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, David Meltzer. You can Google David Meltzer. My website's my first initial last name, D. Meltzer. So if the davidmeltzer.com guys listening out there who's in Newport Beach, I think you should give me that website. You're retired. You're not online. You don't need it. I know that. So thanks for letting me give that message as well.
Absolutely. I hope he gets it. Well, David, my final question is one of the big ideas from your new book, Game Time Decision Making. I want to talk about consistent decision making. How do you think a leader can help their team make more consistent decisions?
That's easy. Values, right? If we teach values, that's what I teach here. I wish you'd have come a little bit earlier. That free food out there I do a training whenever I'm in the office on Fridays for the community. Like we load up this downstairs. It's all about value-based teaching and inspiration. So the values that I teach are really simple. I teach gratitude because it gives you perspective. So if everyone in my office has perspective, it makes everything in the past just a lesson. That's all it is. It makes us better. Everything in the present, something that we can do now is even better than that. And for the entire company, our future is brighter. All through gratitude. It's the most powerful perspective, controlling and inspiring thing that we can have. The second thing is forgiveness. These are the 4 values that I took stock in when I was changing and bouncing back in my life. But forgiveness is empathy. We need to forgive ourselves, and then we can give others forgiveness. We'll be less judgmental. We'll put less conditions on others. We'll project our insecurities far less. We'll live in the truth consciousness in a high priority or consistency than when we live in the ego-based consciousness. So to do that, forgiveness is another value, and then accountability, right? I want everyone in my business to ask 2 questions at all time. What did I do to attract this to myself, and what am I supposed to learn from it? I'm just here to learn lessons. The lessons are going to keep on coming till I learn them. The same lessons will come if I haven't learned them, and they result in pain, so we should learn from that and not make the mistakes twice. And then finally, understanding inspiration, not just how to connect to that which inspires us, and to clear and commit that connection, but to understand my receiving values of all that power and source and energy and wisdom and light that I gather. I can add value to it and give it away to others to inspire them, creating a flow of energy, creating a state of thrivation where everything thrives and grows and accelerates in a more expansive and exponential manner so that we can create an impact. And my goal, over 1 billion people to be happy. I just want 1,000 people like yourself that I can help to inspire another 1,000, to inspire another 1,000 to be happy. And I think that's what the Bounce Back podcast does, and that's what you do, and that's why I wanted to take the time to have you in here to be one of my 1,000 ambassadors, someone that can help me change the world. When I told people I'm going to change the world by making over 1 billion people on earth happy, some people looked at me crazy until I told them, look, there is 1,000 people like you that can reach 1,000 to reach 1,000, 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000, 1,000,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000,000. And if I can impact over 1 billion people to be happy on earth, this earth will change, extraordinarily change, abundance, and there will be far less to bounce back from. There'll be far more setups than setbacks. And that's why I appreciate your podcast. I appreciate you taking time to give me the platform to speak. Hope it was worth the 20 minutes. Don't forget the 5-20 rule. 5 minutes for phone calls, 20 minutes for meetings and interviews, so I can get enough of these done. But if you need anything, please let me know how I can be of service.
David, thank you so much.
Awesome.